Let's go to Odessa now, in the south of Ukraine. Hanna Shelest is director of the security programs at the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation.
What was your reaction when you heard Joe Biden was in the capital?
You know, since morning we had different gossips that somebody of the top level Americans are coming, or probably some top level delegation, because as you know, there were several other delegations, including Israeli parliament and head of the IMF, plus Italian top delegation, but all were a little bit surprised, as usually the downtown Kyiv is not closed. Like when the Macron arrived, for example, nobody been closing such seriously streets in the downtown Kyiv. So the expectations were either Biden or Kamala Harris, because she just a few days ago was in Munich, and it would be logical for her to travel. The question was only who is really arriving.
And how do you feel about it?
You know, that is really symbolic, because in addition to what your journalist just said about that is the first visit after 15 years that we haven't seen the U.S. President in Kyiv. That is the week of the said anniversary when the Russian Federation invaded Ukraine. But also today is a very symbolic day, because that is the day when, during the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, was those mass killings by the police and the Russian snipers, 100 people being killed. So today we expected a lot of commemoration to those sad days. And when you understand that all of these coming together in 1 week, and the US president is coming and continuing his support, he had the chance to be in Lviv, but he traveled to Kyiv, and that is definitely quite a serious signal.
All right, he did not pledge any airplanes, but we did hear promises from the U.S. president to commit to more weaponry. Let's take a listen.
Together, we've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems, more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems, anti-ship and air defense systems, all defend Ukraine, and that doesn't count the other $500 million we're announcing with you today and tomorrow. That's going to be coming your way.
So,
and
Hanna
that's just the
Shelest,
United States in this piece.
Hanna Shelest, your thoughts listening to what's being pledged by the U.S. president, and also what's being discussed right now in Brussels by EU foreign ministers, kind of a joint purchase of ammunition for the Ukrainians.
I will start from the end, because the discussions that are happening today in Brussels are extremely important for Ukraine. We need to understand that daily the Russian Federation shelling 10 times more of the not only missiles, but of the rocket bombs, all type of the ammunition compared to Ukrainian side. And we need more and more if we would like to be sustainable, if we would like to have a proper defense, especially in the regions where we have the close combat, like in Bakhmut or around it. So here, when you have a little bit of Estonia, a little bit of Poland, a little bit of other countries ordering, just from the commercial point of view, that is not very efficient. So the decision that the European Union would like to take is very similar to what they did during the COVID with the vaccines. When it is the big order, the companies are able to invest in production and to make it with a better pricing. We really hope that this decision would be made and announced. At the same time, when you speak about the Biden pledges, we understand perfectly that the real pledges are made during the Rammstein group meeting that is aimed for this, or during the NATO defense ministers meeting, and we just had them last week. For Biden, there were important signals that they are ready to stand with us. First of all, that they are not rejecting any type of the weapons to Ukraine. There is no anymore. And even for the airplanes, we just heard recently that they said they're absolutely okay if other allies will deliver it for Ukraine. But what Ukraine needs now, considering that counteroffensive of the Russian Federation just started, we need ammunition, we need something what we really need today. And airplanes, that is at least half a year for training of our pilots. So that is the long-term planning.
Hanna Shelest, stay with us, please, because we've been to Kyiv. We're with you in the Black Sea port of Odessa, but we'd also like to go to the center of the country. France 24 Chief International Affairs Editor Robert Parsons is there. Rob, reactions where you are to events today during those 5 hours in Kyiv where Joe Biden was there?
Well, this is unquestionably a major statement by Joe Biden to the Ukrainian people and to the Russian Federation, to Vladimir Putin. I think you pointed out in your introduction, it's the first time a president of the United States has gone to a country at war where it hasn't had control of the infrastructure itself. No American troops on the ground. A big risk in a way for Joe Biden, although they will have put a lot of thought into the security. But it is nevertheless a massive statement, particularly coming when it does in the week, the first anniversary of the week when Russia invaded, but also a particularly important anniversary for Ukrainians, the anniversary of the deaths of so many people, over 100 people on the Maidan Square back in 2014. So it is a big statement. A statement, as Joe Biden himself put it, of the United States' unwavering, unflagging support for the people of Ukraine and for its war effort. I was very interested to listen to Hanna Shelest talking then about these meetings that have been taking place in NATO and the statements that Joe Biden made today about weaponry. There's no doubt that is going to be uppermost in Volodymyr Zelensky's mind. In that meeting, which he described as fruitful with Joe Biden today, he will have been asking for weapons now, immediately, and faster and faster and faster. Joe Biden mentioned 2 million artillery shells sent to Ukraine. They need more than that. The Russians have a big advantage in artillery in Bakhmut. And as long as the Ukrainians can absorb the attacks that are coming at the moment and then start thinking about going on the counteroffensive, that is when they will also need an input, a massive input, not just of tanks, not just of artillery systems, but of those shells as well.
Joe Biden, who for all those years in the U.S. Senate during the Cold War, never had to experience a situation where you had war in Europe, ground war in Europe, involving Russia. One of the difficulties, the subtleties of this confrontation is, of course, the fact that you're dealing with a nuclear power, and you're near Europe's largest nuclear power plant right now.
Obviously, François, it has to be a major consideration. And much of the early confusion, I think, at the start of the war was due to the fact that the West was dealing, Ukraine was dealing with a major nuclear power. How do you respond when there is the risk of a nuclear reaction from the Russian Federation, which is something that Vladimir Putin and others in the Russian administration have played on, to try and sow doubt in the minds of the West that perhaps they should back off, perhaps they shouldn't go too far. At the beginning, when there was talk perhaps of air cover over Ukraine being put into place, that was knocked back because it was said to be too risky, that it would raise the possibility of Russia getting into a conflict with NATO. But gradually, bit by bit, I think the understanding of the conflict in Ukraine has begun to change. And the position, I think, is increasingly now is we cannot allow Russia to blackmail the West and Ukraine with the threat of nuclear weapons. The feeling, I think, is increasingly growing that these are empty threats ultimately, that Russia is not playing some sort of game of Russian roulette here, where somebody pulls the trigger first and you never know who's going to die. Russia is not an insane operator. It acts sufficiently rationally not to take that extremely dangerous step of using any kind of nuclear weapon, whether it's tactical or strategic.
Robert Parsons reporting live from Zaporizhzhia. Many thanks. We're going to cross back to Odessa and Hanna Shelest. Hanna, I just want you to rebound off of what Rob just said. Over the weekend, the Russians claiming that the Ukrainians had some kind of nuclear false flag operation in the works. When you hear those kinds of claims, are you jittery or you just dismiss it and you don't care?
First of all, that is quite interesting that just recently we had the sociological survey, very respected company did it in Ukraine, and 86% of Ukrainians said that they are not afraid of the Russian nuclear strike, and they are ready to continue fighting after this. The reason for this is that when we see what Russians are doing at the residential areas, what they already did with the Mariupol, Bakhmut, in Bucha, people are not feeling the same fear as many in the Western European calm countries about what Russia really can do with the nuclear weapons. The second, people are really sober understanding that if Russia will use the nuclear weapons means that they lose everything, that they are not able to reach anything with the nuclear weapons. That's why we are becoming a little bit more critical thinking about the reality of its use, because it is much more effective to threaten by it rather than to use it. Also because there are plenty of other, let's say, consequences that Russia can have also for the neighboring with Ukraine NATO member state. And here, for me, it was really surprised because I heard a lot of these questions when I've been in Paris in November from all governmental officials, all questions about nuclear weapons. And my response was, come on, France is a nuclear power. You are a nuclear power for 60 years. You had Soviet Union as your adversary. So you have plans, you have understanding why you are afraid more than Ukraine about this when you really can critically think about Russian capabilities on the ground. It seems to me that's why Ukrainians are quite skeptical about this, definitely prepared, but what we are afraid much more, that is the Russian missiles that are closing very dangerously to the nuclear power plants. The latest attack last week, one missile were very dangerously close to the southern nuclear power plant. Russians also targeted Khmelnytsky region, where another nuclear power plant situated. And these incidents and accidents can be much more dangerous than just the use of the nuclear weapons.
Hanna Shelest, many thanks for speaking with us on France 24.
Thank you.